Hello there, welcome to Inkquiring Minds. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. If you're not a member of my channel, you'll see this video while I'm flying into Amsterdam for the Dutch Pen Show 2026. If you are a member, you'll see this probably 5 or 6 days in advance. But today I'm going to resurrect a very interesting fountain pen. I've done a couple of these, but I've never done a conversion on one. This is a circa 1960 Parker 61, and it's a capillary filler. You can tell the 61s because they have this arrow on the hood, if you're lucky. And when you undo the barrel, you see there's a black cartridge here. This is not a cartridge. This is a capillary filler, and it's made of Teflon. This was a space-age material back in 1960. And the way you fill this pen is that you put the butt end of the capillary filler into the ink and you let it sit there for 5 seconds or so, 5-10 seconds, and the ink is drawn up into the capillary filler. And because this is Teflon, the ink just rolls off the outside. So the idea was it was touchless, tissueless, messless ink filling, a revolution for its time. It actually worked. But the difficulty with this pen was that it wasn't easy to clean this capillary filler out, or change inks, or service it. The model was discontinued in 1983. If you get one of these and the capillary system works, good for you, that's great. Keep using it like that. They actually work very nicely if you don't want to change inks. But if you got one of these and it won't suck up water anymore or won't suck up ink anymore, there are long involved ways of replacing the internal structure of the capillary filler, but one of the best things to do is to convert it so that you can use a Parker cartridge. And that's what I'm going to do with this one. I tried to clean it out, and a lot of old black ink came out, but it never drew up any water with the capillary filler, so it's pretty much done. So what I'm going to do with this pen is I'm going to convert it so that it will accept Parker cartridges. And to do that, I bought this brass converter on eBay, and I'll show the listing for that right here. Little brass piece with a small stainless steel insert. That is the cartridge piercer, because when you have a Parker cartridge, you plug that in and it has to pierce through the cartridge to get at the ink. We have to remove the capillary filler. We have to modify the feed and the ink collector inside this hood. There are two methods of doing this. One is to convert it so that you only use Parker cartridges, and the other way is to convert it so it will take a Parker converter. But you have to adjust the inside of the barrel for that. And there's a whole mechanism inside the 61's barrel. You might be able to see some of it down in there. There's a spring system in there and a seal that keeps the capillary filler closed while you're using the pen. And there's a way of drilling all that out and pulling out the spring. It might destroy this end pearlescent jewel right here. So I'm just going to do the straight conversion so that you can use Parker short cartridges. And these are readily available on the internet and at pen stores and so forth. It's a modern Parker short cartridge. And I'm following the instructions from the Pen Repair 4th edition by Jim Marshall and Lawrence Oldfield, pages 90 and 91. There's a whole discussion of using this adapter here, this converter, and changing out the guts of the capillary filler. So I'm going to be following that method, but the first thing we need to do is get that hood off and get that capillary filler off as well. Let's triage this pen briefly to see what it needs to come back to the land of the writing other than the conversion itself. So taking a look from the top of this pen, there's a really nice pearlescent jewel on the very top, the classic Parker arrow clip, and a Celluloid cap. And the cap says Parker 61 made in the USA with the modern Parker Halo logo right there, and 61 on the other shoulder as well. And that Parker Halo logo is still in use today and was first introduced on a pen like this one in 1957. The cap is in pretty good shape, needs a little bit of polishing. The more you polish this matte surface, however, the shinier it gets. So we want to keep that as matte as possible. So maybe just a good cleaning rather than a buffing is in order there. We look at the barrel. The barrel has some marks on it that are going to need to be buffed out. It has a beautiful end jewel that I don't want to disturb. And when we take the cap off, one of the issues that Parker 51 users had was they couldn't tell what the orientation of the nib was because they couldn't see it when it was on the page. Am I upside down? Am I right side up? And so with the 61, they added this little chrome insert, which became a bugaboo for this pen because they kept falling out. Especially as people try to restore these pens, they put the hood in an ultrasonic bath, like I would, but that ultrasonic vibration causes that little insert to drop out and the adhesive to relax. So I'm going to polish this very, very carefully so we don't lose that little arrow. There's lots of abrasion right here on this hood. I'm going to try to get this hood off of here because I need to adjust ink collector and the feed on this. The nib looks like it's in good shape. It's 14 karat gold, lots of wear. And there's that tiny, tiny clutch ring redesigned from the 51. And when we unscrew the barrel, this is the part we're going to take out, but there is a crack right, where are you? There you are. Goes all the way down to here. So I'm going to have to fix that as well. This is just to keep the barrel together. This does not hold any ink, does not need to hold any ink, because this whole thing will be sealed. It'll be a cartridge filler. But I need to seal that crack from splitting any further and then polish it all back down again. So those are the things I need to tackle. First, we need to get the hood off, and that's going to require some heat. So it's the next day, and I worked on this pen a bit, as you can probably tell. Since this is the first time I've done one of these conversions, I wanted to do it carefully. And it took quite a bit to separate the capillary filler from the threaded collar and the hood. So the hood goes in there like that, and then the capillary filler went on top. This is the Teflon outer shell, and here's the internal mechanism of the capillary filler. It's just a rolled up piece of plastic of some sort with all kinds of different little divots and holes and perforations, and that's the part that needs to be recharged, replaced, whatever, and very difficult to do that, if at all. So I'm discarding all this because it didn't work when I got the pen. But I kept the shell on it like that while I heated just this part here. Now this is all Teflon coated, and it doesn't matter, I was tossing this away anyway. But the metal heated up and then heated the adhesive that this collar is attached to that shell or hood and allowed that adhesive to relax. I actually soaked it overnight before I tried heating it off, and then tested it because the Parker 51 was made of lucite, a very resilient plastic, and you can heat them and so forth. But this is made of polystyrene, which is much more fragile, much thinner, and much more susceptible to heat. And here's the long feed that goes down inside the capillary filler. So these parts I'm going to discard because I'm going to use this to convert it. But we can push this nib and feed out this end. I should be able to push it out. I'm just going to worry it out of there. Here it comes. There we go. So there's the shell, if you like, or hood. It's different than the Parker 51. And there is the collector and the nib and the feed. But according to the conversion instructions, I have to nip this off a certain amount away from this collector and grind this part down a little bit as well to accept this unit. So I'm going to learn about that. I'm going to put this back in the bath again and the hood. In the meantime, I've got the barrel, which has this crack in it right there, you can see, and I'm going to fill that up with some crazy glue, super glue, on the inside just to hold it together. And then once all that's dry, I'm going to run some Captain Tolly's Creeping Crack Cure all the way down that split, which goes all the way down to about there. So we're going to fill that with Captain Tolly's, but I want to stabilize it with a bit of crazy glue right there so it holds it together. So once I get the crazy glue in there, I'm going to open my clamp and then clamp it back down again to hold it together for quite a while until it dries, and then we'll use the Captain Tolly's on it. Of According to my book, the feed needs to be trimmed to 45 millimeters from the tip to there. So that's going to be cut right about there. So I'm going to measure all that out, make a little scratch mark, and use my Dremel tool to cut it precisely. And then the edge of that needs to be chamfered. Now it says the capillary feed here. Very difficult to see. Maybe you can see right on the end. There are two really tiny channels. There, you can hardly see them. And they suggest widening that channel with an X-Acto blade. So once I've cut it, I'm going to sort of scoop it out a little bit to allow the ink to flow in from the cartridge. But in the meantime, we can pull the nib out, and it just pulls out easily. And you'll see that, let's put it over here, and it has 14K Parker made in the US engraved on it, no date codes. And there's a little pulled up tab right there, along with those two staples. And that's where you line up the nib and feed like that, and that little tab slips right in to the collector. Now these collectors are brittle. I think they're made of acrylic or something. Not the same material that is in the Parker 51. So this little ring, I'm going to take that off. Let's take the nib out again, put it aside, and see if we can remove this feed. But this will be a tricky operation. We need to reduce the length of the collector from what it is at 27.5 millimeters. We've got to reduce it at this end to 23 millimeters. So we've got to take off about that much material. And it's got very, very fine channels built into it. As you can see right there, very, very fine channel, large channel, small channel, and the fine channel goes all the way through. So we don't want to block that. So it's going to take some fine work. I'm going to see whether this is removable first. Okay, progress to date. I got the feed out of the collector. I trimmed it to 45 millimeters. I got the nib off of the feed, and I got the clutch ring off of the old connector. I had to knock that out with my block and a hammer to get it off of there, and I need that. And I widened the channel on the feed, and it chipped off some of the plastic, because this isn't ebonite, this is a plastic, and it's like an acrylic or something, but it's very, very brittle. But I had to reduce the size of that anyway, because the piercing tube that's in the back of this new converter, it pierces the cartridge when you put a new cartridge in. It wasn't the right size and it didn't fit in. So now I've got it so that it actually does fit in through there, and the channel's widened as well. So that's all good. I'm going to polish up the nib, but I've got to reduce the size of this collector to here. That whole unit would go inside the shell, and this would go inside the shell and press right up against that collector, and the clutch ring would go on like so, and then the barrel on that. And speaking of the barrel, I let the crazy glue dry in the clamp, and that's a really nice tight bond. I scraped off any excess and then added one application of Captain Tolly's right there. I'm going to let that dry for 30 minutes and then add another bead of a little bit of Captain Tolly's there. It dries clear and it seeps into those cracks and seals them all. And then I should be able to polish all that down with my micro mesh and polishing wheel. The operative word is should. And there we go with the collector cut to exactly 23 millimeters. Now with that feed lined up with the small channel on the bottom, that can go right in there like that in the notch, and then we just adjust that feed along that nib so it is in the proper orientation. There we go. And that should all now fit. We need a small tube to push up against this to push it back into the shell properly. There we go. And then that should find the threads and actually be able to be screwed on. And you notice what happens, it's pushing that feed out, which I expected. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that feed in the proper location, and we're going to adjust the width of the feed so that it fits around that tube. And the book recommended a couple of things. They did one thing, they put a pin through that hole right there to lock that feed in place. I might try that. But they also said you can put a drop of shellac, the bottom of the feed, at the top of the collector, right there. Find a pin, push it down in there, break it off, and then drop a bit of shellac there to hold that in place. And it shouldn't clog those channels at all. I might have to reduce the size of this feed all the way back. Piercing tube needs to be able to go all the way down, and it's just not wide enough. So yeah, I'm going to do some surgery on this feed. And there we go. I ground it down that the piercing tube fits on it, just like that. It seems to be a little bit long, so I'm going to grind that down a little bit more so that it's below that piercing tube. This metal part is what needs to pierce the cartridge, not the feed. There we go. Now it's sitting so that it's not sticking out. Just the metal will come in contact with the cartridge when it's new. Now let's see whether this works. There, nib and feed together. Put it into the collector with the tiny channel on the bottom. Slide it into the slot. I'm going to put the piercing tube on it first, and then we push the converter in, and that should actually guide it in. Oh, this part stretched over there. Okay, let's try this again. Let's put this up. Just the remaining part of the collector. That's where it was. Put that on. Oh, maybe I need the tube after all. Push it into place. Well, maybe we don't need it. Maybe we don't need it. That might just work. A cartridge in. Feed. Is it going to move around? Yeah, I think I might need to pin that feed down after all. That hole needs to line up. There's the hole, and there's the hole. They need to line up. Yeah, and I'm going to put a small pin in there and then drop some shellac on it to hold it in place. And that'll give it some strength. And then before I put it together, I got to polish up that nib. So now I'm going to use my Dremel tool with a tiny, tiny drill just to enlarge that hole right there so that my needle will go down inside. Just very, very shallow. You can see how it turns white. That's plastic, not ebonite. So now that needle should actually go into that hole and stay there. Yep. Line up our holes, get our needle. Use my guitar string cutter. It should work. There we go. So that end should go straight through. Yep. And see whether it's wide enough. Maybe a little bit deeper. Okay, so that should work. Cut this a little shorter. It might hold it in. I think that hole needs to be a little bit deeper. Small changes and then test. Small changes and then test. It's easier to make it deeper than it is to make it shallower, that's for sure. There it goes. Okay, so there's the pin. It's in the hole. So I'll get out my shellac pen. Add it carefully. I want to fill those channels because it'll block the ink. There we go. You see that drop down inside and sort of filled in around. So let's just leave that to dry. And here's our nib all polished up, looking beautiful. I put it on my Dremel tool. I take the bud off of a cotton swab and slide the shaft in to the nib to hold onto it while I'm polishing it. Makes it easy to polish on a jeweler's polishing cloth as well. So that's all ready to go. All right, another day here. I've done more to the barrel because while I was editing the video, I saw, you probably saw earlier, that there was a second crack on the inside of that barrel. So I filled that with cyanoacrylate glue, better known as crazy glue. In this case, it was Gorilla Glue. And I'm going to add a few layers of Captain Tolly's Creeping Crack Cure on that as well. And then we can polish up that barrel. So it's going to remain in the clamp for the next few minutes. And I've also successfully added that pin to the collector, going right into the feed. I dropped a drop of Gorilla Super Glue right on the top of that pin. I cut it to length and pushed it in there, so it's in there, and it's going to stay in there, and the feed does not move. And I've also tested this. I put the whole thing together and injected water through to see whether it got through this feed into that part of the feed and into the nib in the collector, and it does indeed. So whether it's going to work or not, I don't know, but at this point I know that water actually leaches into the collector, which is what we want to have happen. So this will go there, the cartridge will go there like that, and the whole system should work. So while I'm waiting for the barrel to dry, we're going to put all this stuff aside, and we're going to look at the cap and see whether we can get that clip off. I don't really need to polish anything here, but I want to see whether I can get the parts apart because there might be a lot of ink still trapped inside that cap. So we get a pencil, use it as a mandrel here, and a little gripper material, and push and turn that top plastic jewel. Is it coming out? Yes, it is. There we go. There's the jewel, and there's the brass nut bushing right there with a slot screw. Use our slot screwdriver here, and it's too wide. So we get out our Linus Tech Tips tool, find a bit that works, and there it is. And oh, that's tight. I'll have to get some leverage here. There we go. Wow, that was extremely tight. Lots of corrosion in there, or old ink. And there's the clip. Yeah, just old debris, ink, and stuff like that. The clip's in really good shape. This is chrome, so I'm not going to polish it, because you'll just polish right through that chrome, because it's brass underneath. There's the clutch mechanism and the cap seal. There. So now I got the seal out, I can put all of that together. That comes off like that. There, we can put all these pieces together. Lots of old ink in there. Let's put it all together into the ultrasonic bath for a couple of minutes and clean it up. You can see that the cap has one scrape on it there. That's exactly where the clip lives, and so that's where it'll go back. But other than that, the cap is in pretty good shape. There's a slight abrasion right there, but that's under the clip as well. And you can see that there is a little lip right there in the top of the cap, and that's what lines up the clip on the top, so you know you're in the right place. Okay, the cap parts are all nice and clean, so let's put this thing back together again. This was the part that was the dirtiest, the cap seal. And so those clutch fingers go on like that, right down to the bottom. And then we can push that whole unit into the cap, just like that. Find the tab for the clip. It's easy because that's where the mark is. And it clicks in place. And then we can put the brass nut and then screw it down. Press on it to make sure that it's engaging with those threads. There we go. And then tighten it down. And then we can attach the end jewel. Thread started, use some gripper and a pusher, and give it a nice tight turn. And that should be functional. And it's not. I've got it in the wrong position. See how it's all skewed over? I missed for some reason. We'll do the whole thing over again. Don't have to take it all the way off. Just have to find that slot, that tab, and keep it on that tab. There we go. There, that's straight. And those tabs keep that clip from rotating. There we go. Now it's all good. Now I've discovered yet another crack in there. So there are 3 cracks in that barrel. And you'll seal them all with Captain Tolly's and Crazy Glue. And so that's going to dry for a bit before we can polish it up. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the converter into the hood. There we go. I'm going to leave this aside for now. And then when the barrel's ready, I can attach the barrel and the hood together, and I can polish them together. So before we do any polishing of these parts, I want to put it together and do a dip test on this nib. And if it writes okay and doesn't need any polishing or tuning, we can go ahead and polish all this and then I'll ink it up later. But if it needs some tuning, it's easy to get it back out again if I need to get at that nib, or I can just tune it as it is. But just at a glance, that nib looks terrific. Looks like a medium to a fine. So let's put that together. I'm going to use this little metal tube. I actually cut a ballpoint refill cartridge in 2 with my Dremel tool and cleaned it all out, and used that steel aluminum tube for various things, mostly going around the tails of Schaefer feeds to knock them out. So we can put that just like that. This goes into this shell in only one direction because they made that bottom part flat, and so it fits only one way up through there. There we go. Pushed it through. And now this end here with the cartridge piercer will slip over the end of that feed and screw into the shell. I'm just going to put the clutch ring on there, and it should go down tight. That's all lined up. Now let's see if this goes on. There we go. Now I got something to grip so I can do a dip test. So that'll be my dip grip. I use some Watermans. What else is new? Waterman Serenity Blue. There's no way to tell exactly what year this pen is, but it's a circa 1960. It is a Parker 61. It has a 14 karat gold. I'd say medium nib. Fine to a medium. Let's check the wetness. Not terrifically wet, but these weren't designed to be wet pens. These were designed to dry quickly. Let's see some line widths, and there's no variation whatsoever. Again, not a surprise. So with a push, get out our Dominant Industries MM pad and check what the line widths are. The horizontal is a 4. The vertical is a 4 as well. And with a push, it's 5. So technically, this is a fine nib, which is just fine. Do I need any polishing? It's very smooth, and I don't think it needs anything at all. It has feedback, but it is not unpleasant. If anything, I might just brush it up a little bit with some 12,000 grit. So there we go. Now I'm going to take that unit apart just to take the nib out, because I don't want to get any polishing compound or anything on that collector unit. You can see how the capillary action drew it up into the collector a little bit. And I'll put this back together again with the clutch ring, and we'll go ahead and polish this out. So that's all that Captain Tolly's on there. So I'll buff all that out. All those cracks should be sealed. Again, those cracks are just structural. There will be no ink inside that barrel to leak out. So it's not a leak seal so much as a structural thing. So let's just do a before and after here. Here is the hood shell before. See, there's all kinds of rippling on it and everything in the barrel with all that gack from Captain Tolly all over it. And there are some abrasions on the back right there that need to come out. So that's what the pen looks like beforehand. And the cap, there really was nothing to do. It's in perfect shape. I decided to polish the barrel separately, and there it is, all shined up, looking great from top to bottom. Those cracks are visible, but you have to look for them. There they are, and they're all stabilized and polished out. Looks pretty good. And there's the hood shell all polished up. Interesting thing, this is so thin. This is, again, polystyrene. Very thin, soft and brittle plastic. It polishes up okay, but it's so thin. This has got to be injection molded. I don't see any injection molding gates or lines on it. It's very well polished. But you can see there's internal structure there, right around the nose cone, that holds the collector in place, that structure there. And it's so thin at that point that while I was polishing it, some of that structure comes out. And you can see some of it right, to look for it, right there. And the more I polished it, the bigger it got, so I stopped. And it's a blemish, but you can see just a faint line all the way around at that point. I thought at first it was marks from the cap going on and off, or the clutch fingers going in and out, but no, it's the internal structure of that plastic. So very interesting, but it's all very shiny and polished up. So now we can put all this back together again. So we'll take our nib unit. I wonder if I can just drop it in this time. It goes in just like that. And it sort of sits right up against that internal structure there. This will push it the rest of the way in and lock it in place. We put the clutch ring on and then our barrel. And there's our pen complete. Looking very nice. We'll have to see whether it actually works or not. The clutch ring works perfectly. The pen looks almost brand new. There's the flaws around the shell right there, and there are some faintly visible cracks around the barrel that are stabilized. The pen posts beautifully like a Parker 45, very nicely balanced in the hand. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this barrel off, and we're going to plug in a Parker short cartridge. Let's push that in, see if the piercer works, and it does. Give it a slight turn, and I'm just going to leave it face down for 10 or 15 minutes and then come back and see if it writes. And here we go. It's several minutes later, say 10-15 minutes later. I've had it nib down, so that ink has a chance to flow into the collector, and we'll see whether it's true that that converter actually works. So here we go. Does it work or not? Oh, it's true. It's true.
Bitte, baby.
Oh. Is it true what they say about the way you people are gifted? Oh, it's true.
It works, and it's flowing very nicely. It's not a wet pen, but these Parker 61s, Parker 51s are never very wet, and it seems to be keeping up nicely. Well, I'm very pleased. So I'll be back in a few minutes with my thoughts about this resurrection. So what are my thoughts on this pen resurrection? I'm really pleased with this resurrection for a couple of reasons. Reason one is that this pen was donated to Inkquiring Minds by subscriber Anne. She emailed me telling me that she had acquired this pen at an estate sale, but couldn't get the capillary filler to work. She also acquired this Parker Classic ballpoint, but she couldn't find a refill to make this work. Interesting that I have this matching fountain pen to the ballpoint. This is a Parker Classic. These pens are from the 70s, early 80s, something like that. And this Parker Classic fountain pen belongs to my friend Ronnie. And so that's going to make a really nice mate for that pen. So she asked if I could use these in a resurrection video. Of course. Thank you very much for your generous donation to the channel, Anne. The second reason I'm pleased with this resurrection is that I've wanted to try this conversion of a Parker 61 for a while now. If I had a Parker 61 capillary filler where the filler actually worked, I wouldn't dream of converting it. They didn't make a lot of these Parker 61 capillary fillers before they were changed into aerometric fillers, so they're relatively rare. And unlike the Parker 51 aerometric, which I'll enthusiastically convert into cartridge fillers because Parker made thousands and thousands of them, the Parker 61 capillary should be preserved if you can. But this one was dead. Now it's not. It writes very well. I wasn't sure it would with all the tinkering I did with the guts inside there, but it's a very pleasant writer. So if you're interested in having a piece of fountain pen history that writes with the modern convenience of Parker cartridges, I'm selling this for $150 US plus shipping. It was a donation by Anne, but I sunk some money into it for the brass converter. And I think that's a very reasonable price, considering it isn't in its classic form anymore, but it is very, very usable. Those cracks that you can almost see now on the barrel are stabilized, so you don't need to worry about that other than over cranking the barrel. I wish you wouldn't do those kinds of things, but it's easy to plug a cartridge in here, and these cartridges are available online or at your favorite stationery store. They are the short Parker Quink cartridges called the Quink Minis. But with a pocket full of these Parker Quink Minis, this could be an EDC everyday carry fountain pen for you. Email me at inkquiringminds@gmail.com with your name and your address if you're interested in purchasing this pen, and I'll send you instructions on how to pay via PayPal and get you a shipping quote. And there you have it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. And you can join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month. I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comment section, and you'll get cool emojis, badges, sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as early access to all of my videos the moment I upload them. Basic members get 10% off, and $5 a month patron members get 20% off resurrected pen purchases. And that just leaves it for me to say, thank you. For watching. And that's all she wrote.
I made this.